Hi everyone, Frank Demore. Thank God it's Friday. A lot going on in the world, connecting Bible prophecy and current events, so let's get right to it. Scroll down here to the first story. And of course, I always give the scripture first before connecting the current events. So let's go right to it. And here we are in the book of Revelation, chapter 13, verses 16 through 18. And it says this: "And he causeth all, both small and great, rich or poor, free and bond, to receive a mark in their right hand or in their forehead, and that no man might buy or sell, say he that had the mark, or the name of the beast, or the number of his name. Here is wisdom. Let him that hath understanding count the number of the beast, for it is the number of a man, and his number is 666. So what does this tell us? This is where Jesus is showing us that the Antichrist is going to be able to control the entire world's economy. And he, of course, will be doing this during the 7-year tribulation. How is he going to do this? Well, there's going to be a mark that will be placed either on the forehead, as you see here in this picture, or in the hand. So what I've been showing you, and in my book, in the Last Chronicles of Planet Earth, in chapter 1, you will see all kinds of evidence that I show you that the world technology and the world going towards national IDs and being able to recognize who the people are moving towards the face and towards the hand. So we're definitely on the road to seeing Revelation chapter 13 coming to fruition, but it won't actually be fulfilled entirely until the 7-year tribulation. But we're definitely on that road. So let me give you another one of the proof texts to show you that we are on that road. Now here's an article that just showed up on September the 14th, which by the way is today. With a wave of a hand, Intel wants to do away with passwords. Man, if this doesn't show you we're on that road, I don't know what does. It says the passwords for online banking, social networks, and email could be replaced with the wave of a hand if the prototype technology developed by Intel makes it to the tablets and laptops. Aiming to do away with the need to remember passwords for a growing number of online services, Intel searchers have put together a tablet with a new software and a biometric sensor that recognizes the unique patterns of veins on a person's palm. Now, like I said, this is not the mark of the beast. It is the road leading to the mark of the beast. And there's all different kinds of technologies, and again, leading towards the hand and the face. But this is very, very good news pointing to exactly what Jesus had to say. Now keep in mind, what the Lord told us here in Revelation chapter 13 was given to us almost 2,000 years ago. And so now we see the exact, we see this kind of technology that only God could know was coming and being directed toward the hand, the wave of the hand. So there is definite proof that the Lord's showing you the signs of the last days. Now moving on to earthquakes, here's another one of the prophecies in Matthew 24:7. The Lord told us, "There shall rise a nation shall rise against nation, and kingdom against kingdom, and there shall be famines and pestilence and earthquakes," and that's what we're centering on today, in diverse places. And of course in Luke 21:11, Jesus points out the great earthquakes. And also he shows us in this same verse that there's going to be fearful sights. All right, so this is what I'm going to be concentrating on. Now yesterday, as you can see from my post yesterday, I did not take down the red flag concerning these strong earthquakes that are coming. And as you can see from the report so far from the earthquakes that have already showed up, there was a 6.2 earthquake that hit again in the region of Indonesia, which is a strong earthquake. Now, again, other news we see in Luke 21:26. The Lord Jesus tells us hearts failing. them for fear, for looking after those things which are coming on the earth, for the powers of heaven shall be shaken. So definitely things are taking place on this earth. The ground is definitely shaking. And take a look at this article. This is the headline. Heart problems increase substantially after earthquake, new study claims. It says a claim carried out by two Portuguese researchers, which is recently unveiled during the European Epidemiology Congress in Porto, shows that the risk of suffering heart complications increases significantly in the wake of an earthquake. So there you go. There's really not much I can say about this. But let me just tell you this. The stronger the earthquakes come, the more frequent the earthquakes come. We know that that's going to happen because the Lord told us that the last days would happen in birth pangs. You're going to see more news like this concerning people that are having heart problems because of these the shakings that are going on around the world. And we know that they're going to increase because the Lord's told us about those birth pangs. Now, considering the other prophecy that I showed you up here where it says the fearful sights, here's another one. Guatemala's volcano erupts outside tourist center. Officials ordered 33,000 people evacuated. And of course, to them, it is definitely a fearful sight. And there's really not much else I can say about that. But I could add this, that 2012, we've been seeing a lot of volcanoes exploding alongside all these different earthquakes that are coming up. And I mean big earthquakes. So all of these things are happening at the same time, and this is exactly what Jesus warned in Matthew chapter 24. When you shall see all these things, know that it's near, even at the door. Another one of the signs, wars, rumors of wars, and civil unrest. We see this again, another section of Matthew 24:7. Nation against nation, and also the kingdom against kingdom. That would be individual nations fighting against themselves in unrest. And so here is some more information about what's taking place with the unrest around the world because of a movie that went out that defaced the so-called Prophet Muhammad, and it's generated a lot of problems for the United States in many different areas. So I'm just going to play a little clip of this and we'll move on.
The U.S. gives $1.6 billion a year in aid to Egypt, second only to Israel in the Middle East and globally. But military and economic aid doesn't mean the two countries are on the best of terms these days.
I don't think that we would consider them an ally, but we don't consider them an enemy.
Not an ally. U.S. officials, including the president, have used the term to describe the U.S.-Egypt relationship both before and after the revolution.
Egypt's been an ally of ours on a lot of critical issues.
Obama's comments on Wednesday came before Egypt's president, Mohamed Morsi, assured him Egypt would take all measures to secure the U.S. embassy. Violent protests have been ongoing since Tuesday, sparked by an amateur film clip made in the U.S. that denigrates the Prophet Muhammad. American officials were quick to point out that ally is used to describe two countries that have a mutual defense treaty, which the U.S. and Egypt do not.
Ally is a legal term of art.
If Morsi didn't get the message that the U.S. will not tolerate violence on its embassy in Cairo, the Secretary of State doubled down.
We all, whether we are leaders in government, leaders in civil society, or religious leaders, must draw the line at violence.
The ties between Egypt and its most generous benefactor have been strained in recent months as the new government struggles to resume its traditional role as a regional power. The challenge now for the U.S. and Egypt is to figure out how to transform their relationship in light of all of the political changes in the region.
So that goes hand in hand. This news goes hand in hand with Barack Obama's doubled mouth statements that he gives. Now, most of the time that he says something about allies, like he does, for example, Israel, we see that the news brings out contention, the real contention between the nations. We see it with Israel, and now we're seeing it with the so-called ally of Egypt. So just keep that in mind. And there's a list of the different places that these riots have occurred. You'll see that Egypt is mentioned in the Psalm 83 war coming against Israel. Libya is mentioned in the Ezekiel 38 coming against Israel. Lebanon is mentioned in the Psalm 83 war. Sudan is mentioned in the Ezekiel war. Afghanistan is mentioned in the Ezekiel war. So is Tunisia. And so all of the news is very significant when it's pointing to the very nations that God warned us about. And of course, I'm going to give you some other news about different places that the upheaval is taking place. And here's another one in Jerusalem. And of course, the Muslims have been quick to riot all the time when something happens with the religion, and either the riots start in, like you saw today with the embassies, or in Jerusalem, because the Muslim faith or Islamic faith, there's always contention there, especially after 1967 when Israel took over or regained possession of the Temple Mount there in Jerusalem. And this has caused, as you saw my video from yesterday, this has caused the peace negotiations in the Middle East to collapse. And so anytime something happens with the Muslim faith, you can definitely see that something's going to happen in Israel, and it did again. So considering now the other prophecy, disease, you see it here in 24/7. Of course, I outlined it as pestilence. There's been major problems going on with this bird flu. It continues to threaten in Vietnam. So according to this article, it says the bird flu has spread to 2 more provinces in northern Vietnam. This according to the Animal Health and under Vietnam's Ministry of Agriculture and Rural Development. Bird flu has spread to 7 provinces in Vietnam's northern and central regions. And so it is definitely spreading, and as you can go down here, you'll see that more than 600 people, or 600 people infected, and fowls have been culled. So that is a lot of infected fowls that have been killed because of this bird flu. And when you go to my book, once again, when you go to my book, and you can download the book today for free if you're brand new. When you go to my book, you'll see there's a chapter in chapter 4 where I talk about diseases, and I outline just about every single case for the last 3 years of how birds, animals, and the beasts are dying, and the fish are dying. And of course, this is a fulfillment of prophecy as well, and that is also going to increase and get much more intense than it is now that we're seeing all these different birds and animals and fish dying. Now, let's go to the food crisis and what the Lord warns us about in Revelation 6:6, because the Lord said, "And I heard the voice in the midst of the 4 beasts say, a measure of wheat," get that, wheat, "for a penny, and 3 measures of barley for a penny." So the Lord is telling us, he's pointing here to wheat and barley. Now, why is he doing that? Well, obviously, if you know what the Lord said and you see what's going on in the current events, you know that we're headed for a crisis, a food crisis. And I wrote a special note here. You'll see a note from Frank. It says, anyone who has read the prophecies concerning starvation and read Revelation 6:6, where we see people living during the tribulation will have to work all day long for a very small meal. In Revelation 6:6, Jesus points out wheat and barley. You are probably going to ask me, why am I linking the prophecy concerning disease with Revelation 6:6? However, when you watch the next 2 videos below, you will see the connection. Now, I'm not even going to play these for you, but let me tell you this. The United States, you'll see it right here, the headline, the threat of CEO or CSIRO's GM wheat revealed at press conference. And what this is about is they've been altering the wheat. And it's killing people, it's killing animals. And there's a group that they've had a press conference, and they want some information. They're demanding information. This is a mind opener and a mind boggler, let me tell you. And very seldom will I ever post anything about conspiracy theories. But after looking at the evidence, both in this article and in this article with these videos, I'm just beginning to wonder, what the heck is going on. So I think that you really need to watch this, and this is why I put it up there for you. So I just wanted you to be aware of, and the bottom line is this: there is problems with the wheat. All right, this is what you're going to see here. And those problems with the wheat are killing animals and people. And the more they do this, if it's not stopped, genetically modifying the chromosomes and the genes in your body, if it's not stopped and it spreads, you're going to have a major catastrophe around the world dealing with wheat and probably other crops as well. And of course, this goes back to mind what the Lord has shown us about the wheat and the barley in the last days. Now, this is only one part of the major situation that's going to be developing during the tribulation period. Of course, there's going to be other factors during the tribulation that is going to cause crops to die, and it's going to cause famines and starvation. We see that already with the intense heat that is being generated by the weird weather that we've been seeing every single year. So all of these things, again, are happening when we see the rest of the prophecies coming to pass. Now, Jesus also told us that in the last days we're going to see some major storms. We know this by Luke 21:25. And it says this: "And there shall be signs in the sun, and in the moon, and in the stars, and upon the earth distress of nations." And we're seeing a lot of distress of nations, but why? "With perplexity, the sea and the waves roaring." That tells us major storms, and we've been seeing a lot of those major storms. And again, in my book, I'll point this out in detail. And again, you can see this today. You can read it today for free. But here is the headline talking about this super typhoon. And when you look at this thing, it's just gigantic. And they're talking about this this storm that's coming, that it was a Category 5. They downgraded it to a Category 4. But there's a possibility that it's going to even increase in size again, and this is what they're telling you. I wanted you to be aware of this. This is what it looks like. It's just massive. And we know that when you have massive storms like this and they hit, if it goes up any higher, it's going to be even worse. But we know that even if it stayed at a Category 4, which is, this super typhoon rating, then when it hits, it's definitely going to cause the same thing we have been seeing this year, perplexity with the seas and the seas and the waves roaring, and you're going to see a lot of distress when it hits. So watch and see what happens with this super typhoon that the NASA is talking about. Now let's go back to Zechariah 12:3, and here the Lord tells us, "In that day I will make Jerusalem a burdensome stone for all people, and all people burden themselves with it shall be cut into pieces, though all the people of the earth are gathered against it." So we know war is coming. We know that by Zechariah 12:3. We also know that Israel is going to be isolated, and everyone is going to come against Israel. And of course we know, if you read the book of Revelation and Zechariah, you will know that this major war will actually be seen during the tribulation. There's going to be other wars before that, but the major war that most of you know about is the Battle of Armageddon, which takes place in the book of Revelation during the tribulation period. But also I wanted to tie in with wars and rumors of wars that you'll find and you'll see in Matthew 24:7. And I want to connect the dots here with these articles. Here's the headline: Israel's window for action against Iran is getting much smaller, says the Ambassador Oren. Now, this is leading towards two wars. It could be leading towards the war that we see. Let me bring this up for you. One of them is the Psalm 83 war, which we'll be talking about in a little bit, but the other one is also the war, the Ezekiel war, which will follow the Psalm 83 war. But let me just show you this. And what I did, now the article was pretty long, and all I did was clip some of the most important part of it, but I recommend that you read the whole thing. It says this, and I'll connect the dots. Is there any remote likelihood that Israel feels the need to resort to military action now before the American elections? And once you read this article, you see there was a host of different questions that were proposed, and Oren has answered these things. He says, I'm not going to go into any details about operations. Of course he can't, because if Israel's got those operations and plans to strike Iran, he can't give them away. I would like to say that the American elections don't play any role in our calculations. The only issue is that the crucial here is the speed with which the Iranian nuclear program is accelerating, both in terms of its accumulation rate and the rate of which they are producing enriched uranium, both at the 1.5% and 20%, and the rate of which the Iranian nuclear program is being moved underground with its facilities beyond the capability to interdict. So, goes on, and on the second point, is there an estimate? In other words, do you think that there's going to be a time that Israel is going to attack? Is Israel incapable of having a substantial impact on the Iranian program if nothing is done within the next 6 months or a year or 3 months? Now get this, you'll see it's in red because it's really important. All I can say is that our window is small and is growing much smaller. So he is sending out signals to the world they're going to attack. And this is why I put this in red. They're going to have to do something, as I pointed out yesterday in my video yesterday, because nobody else is going to do anything to stop Iran. All they've been doing is talking for the last 5 years, while Iran gets closer and closer, and they get more of these centrifuges, which are going to be able to allow them to put a nuclear bomb together. Now, the counter argument to why there is, let me get right to it because I lost the phone started to ring here. Why there is no Obama-Netanyahu meeting in the context of military warning about the complexity might be that Israel is about to do something. And therefore, the last thing the president wants to do is be complacent about meeting the prime minister. Do you think that's possibly the case? So what they're talking about here, I'll just brief you in very, very quickly, is that Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu wanted to meet with Barack Obama. Barack Obama refused. This is, becomes very significant because you're talking about an event that could actually start World War III. And so it becomes a major issue amongst the nations, and this is why the press has picked it up, and this is why they asked the question. And therefore, the last thing that the president wants to do is be complacent about the meeting. And of course, he's been complacent about a meeting. If it's this major, why in the world would the president of the United States not do anything in his power to meet with the prime minister of Israel? And that is a huge question, as you can see right there. It says this for his answer: I think that what happened there was a scheduling problem. That is bunch of bull if I've ever seen it. You're going to see why. I know it sounds mundane, but the fact is there are two busy individuals, and the Prime Minister was coming to New York between the Jewish holidays, in between Yom Kippur and Sukkot, and the President couldn't be in New York at that time. When you're talking about events that may cause another world war, you better believe it. If I was the President, and I'm pretty sure that if anybody else was the President, they would meet with them. Then it goes on to say, they're not going to move the heavens and the earth and cancel. I don't know. The President's meeting with the leader of Egypt, who's a 9/11 semi-dinar, for the sake of the meeting with Netanyahu? It's a very good question. Then he goes, you have to ask the Egyptian ambassador, but I think that Obama's meeting with President Mohammed Morsi is happening prior to Netanyahu's arrival in New York. So the meeting is a lost cause. The Prime Minister will meet with the Secretary of State, Hillary Clinton. And do you think that ultimately there will be an Obama-Netanyahu meeting, and maybe in Washington at some stage of this trip? As far as I know, there's a scheduling difficulty. You know, when leaders of two major countries that have been involved in wars and conflict for years and years, like the United States and Israel, you would think that these people would come together. Netanyahu has asked to be seen. Barack Obama refused it. And now they're talking about the scheduling difference. And take a look at this. The headline, Scheduling Crisis. The White House turns down the meeting with the only true friend and ally the America has in the Middle East because of scheduling conflicts. Notice the question mark there. Now, considering that the Israelis most assuredly are giving serious consideration to launching a preemptive strike against Iran's nuclear facilities, an act that would likely drag the United States into war with Iran, it's mind-boggling that the President won't take time out from his Gulf game to meet with the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. Now, I got the two links there. Go read it yourself. But, you know, think about this. Is golf more important than averting World War III? Is a golf game more important than assuring your supposedly closest friend in the Middle East, Israel, that they got their back? Well, it appears that they got their back all right, but they got a machete ready to stick it into Israel. And when you do this, as I talked about yesterday, you are still under the curse of God for actually coming against Israel. And you better be watching what's going to happen with America, because once you're under the curse, anything's liable to happen. Major storms, major earthquakes, whatever it is. We've seen it in the past, and I document these circumstances and the events that are taking place when somebody goes against Israel. Read the chapter in my book called God's Curse. But this is ridiculous, that the scheduling problems. He's got time to meet Morsi, and you better make time for the Prime Minister of Israel. Now, getting back another headline for wars and rumors of wars, you'll see here. Netanyahu, what if the U.S. does not intervene in Iran? In a special interview with Israel Heyman and published in full on Sunday, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu dismisses allegations that his insistence on red lines is impacting the U.S. presidential race. And Lieberman Barak criticized PM for public discussions on Iran issue. It says Israel must ask itself what will happen if the U.S. fails to take action to stop Iran's nuclear program. The Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu told the Heyman in the special Rosh Hashanah interview this week. Now keep in mind, Rosh Hashanah is coming. It's the 17th and the 18th of this month, and there's always that possibility that this would be the time where the Lord would come back from his church. Now we don't know for sure, But we do know that since the Lord had already fulfilled the first 4 festivals during the spring, that when he comes back the second time, it appears that he's going to pick up where he left off, and the next one is the Rosh Hashanah, and that's why we warn people every September, just in case this is the year that the Lord has picked. So I wanted to throw that in there. Now, it says, in the interview to be published in full on Sunday, Netanyahu addressed recent assessments on the top defense officials, who suggested that there is still time before action against Iran becomes necessary. And I hope that all people who say that we should wait until the very last minute, but what if the U.S. doesn't intervene? Very good question. That is the question we have to ask, he said. Netanyahu also dismissed the allegations that his insistence on red lines behind which the U.S. would commit to taking military action against Iran was impacting the presidential race currently underway in the U.S. This is nonsense, because the issue that is guiding me is not the U.S. elections, but the centrifuges, which I just mentioned, by the way. The centrifuges is in Iran. And what can I do if the centrifuges in Iran are inconsiderate of the U.S. political timetable? If the Iranians were to hit the pause button and halt the uranium enrichment and bomb preparations until after the elections, I would be able to wait. But obviously he's saying, I can't wait. I mean, the elections, so what's going on in the United States with elections? The survival of the Israeli people are more important. That's what Benjamin Netanyahu is saying. Now, in addition, the Prime Minister explained that the gaps between Washington and Jerusalem's stances on the Iranian issue revolve not on the question of dates, but rather on the question of process. And any world leader who's the leader of a nation obviously would consider the process rather than the date, especially if they're just talking about elections in another nation. Now, referring to homeland preparedness, Netanyahu said, you can protect the country from missiles in one way or the other, but there's no protection against atomic bombs. And the only way to protect against this is to prevent the creation of such reality by the enemy, and of course, make it clear, listen to this, make it clear to anyone who ever consider attacking Israel with weapons of mass destruction, do it at your own peril. Now, we do know from Scripture that there are going to be, as I said before, 2 wars, the Psalm 83 war and then the Ezekiel war. And we know that Israel's going to win both of those wars, and we know that the reason why is because God is not going to allow Israel to be wiped off the map. And so we already know the outcome of these wars. And maybe the Jews don't understand that God is going to be coming at their rescue, especially during the Psalm or the Ezekiel 38 war, where the Lord even tells us that that very day was set aside to sanctify God's name, his name. So let's move on to this signs of the Psalm 83 war. As we see here, headline, report Israeli strike could delay Iran nuclear program by 2 years. An American strike on Iran could delay the Islamic Republic's nuclear program by 4 years, and an Israeli strike could delay it by 2 years, whereas a military operation could lead to an all-out war in the Middle East, unite citizens in Iran, and widen gaps between the Western and Islamic worlds, a report published on Thursday by the Iran Project revealed. Now it gets interesting here. It says, the report, which was compiled by former U.S. defense officials and foreign policy expert, reviews the pros and the cons and against the strike against Iran. The report reveals that military action that relies on an aerial strikes, supplemented by cyber attacks, covert operation, and perhaps special operation forces, might destroy or severely damage Iran's nuclear facilities, but In our judgment, complete destruction of Iran's nuclear program is unlikely, and Iran would still retain the scientific capacity and the expertise to start its nuclear program again if it chose to do so. And of course, they give you a picture where they believe that the site is nuclear site. Now pay attention to this, because this is where I'll connect the dots. The report authors warn that if Iran's nuclear program is attacked by the U.S. or Israel, in the absence of international mandate or a multinational coalition, support for maintaining sanctions against Iran could be subsequently weakened. Moreover, it noted that Iran could use well-armed proxies such as the Hezbollah or the Shiite militant groups in Iraq, as well as by Iranian covert forces and the IRGS Ox force, which could be even more damaging to the U.S. and the Israeli interest than direct Iranian retaliation. So what they're saying here is, if, and I've mentioned this many, many times as one of the scenarios I believe that could happen, if Iran strikes at Israel, you will see, no doubt, that what they're talking about here, these proxy nations, the Hezbollah and Iraq, both of these nations are mentioned in the Psalm 83 prophecy, right? Just take a look. You'll see the numbers from 1 to 10. You'll see all the people. And when you look to the right, you'll see the modern day names of those people. And you will see, for example, in number 10, it would be the northern Iraq. And so you have the Hezbollah also being named. You'll see the Hezbollah here in number 5. And they are mentioned also in number 9. You'll see Tyre, today's Hezbollah, and southern Lebanese. So what they're saying here is, again, in short, if Israel attacks, the proxies will attack Israel. And I believe that once that happens, it won't just be the Hezbollah and Iraq. You will see all of these nations coming against Israel, and you will see the fruition of that prophecy take place. So watch what's going on, because what they're saying here is exactly what the Lord has already pointed to when he's naming the exact nations, and he's pointing to that war. Now, that would be the end of the prophecy update, but I just want to give you a little bit of what's going on with the last Chronicles of Planet Earth missions and what we're doing. And you see here, this is a picture of Francis, and of course our ministry is continuing to help Francis schooling and to keep spreading the Lord's message. Francis got a hold of my book about 2 years ago. He read it. It changed his life. And ever since then, he has been spreading the word of the Lord Jesus Christ in many places in Africa. Now, he is going through school. We're helping going through school. And at the same time, he's working at a Christian radio station. And Francis, via our relationship now, has got me into the radio station, a Christian radio station in Nairobi. And so I've been blessed to be able to preach Jesus over the airways in Africa via the work that Francis has done. And I'm thanking God for Francis, and I'm thanking God that he is touching people to help get this message out and to give support to Francis. Now, here is another picture of Francis, and this is my own prayer that I wanted to share with you. You'll see the arrow here that the Lord is definitely touching people. It's been a blessing, and this is my prayer. Lord Jesus, I thank you for you are touching hearts so that the ministry can help people like Francis. Because of Francis, your word is being spread in many places in Africa and in college settings. It is my blessing to know that I do not have to ask for help, knowing that it is you who will appoint the people to act. I can do nothing in this ministry without you, Father, and I pray by our faith in you, you will continue to touch many so we may continue to bless many. Your son, Frank DeMora. And it is an honor, a privilege to know Francis. It's an honor and a privilege to be placed in a ministry that the Lord is guiding and helping different people. And it's an honor to be a part of this kingdom work for Jesus Christ. And I pray that it never stops until the Lord takes us home or we get raptured. So with that, have a great weekend. And if God wills, we'll have more news for you on Monday. This is Frank DeMora saying, have a great weekend.